Hey, what's up guys? Joker here. Hope you're all doing well. Today we have got a few news stories in the world of tech and PC gaming, but we will be primarily discussing AMD, who has a recent rumor circulating around that they could be moving some of their production over to Samsung rather than TSMC for their APUs and GPUs in an effort to alleviate some of the chip shortages which we've seen since late 2020, and that's obviously continuing on in 2021 and people not being able to get these products. So that's a rumor that's kind of kicking around right now, and I want to discuss, why that might be on top of just the fact that there are shortages, because recently there's been some stock market manipulation with the price of AMD stock that's kind of gotten them sort of tied in with what's been going on with Wall Street bets and GameStop. So I think there's maybe something to that, and we'll talk about all of that here in this video, as well as them also promising some more product for the first quarter of 2021 on their reference card. So we'll talk about that. And also a Sony exclusive game is now coming to the Xbox, and it could be coming to the PC very soon. And it's been exclusive to the PlayStation for, I think, over a decade at this point. Did you just finish building a sweet gaming rig only to have this happen to you? Not to worry, because your CD Key has you covered with Windows 10 Pro licenses for under $18. And if you head over there right now, you could save 20% off with my code JPD20 at checkout. You'll receive your key within seconds, and then just click the start button and type activate to find the Windows activation screen, and all you gotta do then is paste your code in. For more info as well as that coupon code, be sure to check out the links down in the description below. But first up, we need to discuss AMD, who, as I said at the start, are in talks with Samsung to resolve their chip shortages. And you should know that this is right now being classified as a rumor, as it showed up originally on a Korean tech forum and people talking about it. So absolutely nothing is confirmed about this story, and it basically just says they're trying to alleviate their chip shortages. Up until now, the APUs and GPUs they've been working on have been manufactured by TSMC, but they want to now move some of that production over to Samsung as well, who has been working with NVIDIA on their consumer Ampere GPUs. NVIDIA also does work with TSMC for their server level stuff, but for the consumer stuff, at least starting with Ampere, they did move over to Samsung, and that seems to have worked out well for them so far, although they have shortages as well. So I'm not really sure how much Samsung can help alleviate those shortages. It also could just maybe be for future cards, maybe lower tier Radeon GPUs that have yet to be announced. So that is a possibility right there. But I think if they did end up going over to Samsung for some of their production, I really don't think it can hurt. Having another company working on the production of your chips should help alleviate some of those shortages, even a little bit in the short term, and definitely probably quite a bit in the long terms of things if they continue on working with Samsung further down the road. But I think the more interesting thing on this topic is something that I just have to right now classify. This is just a conspiracy theory of my own. I have not read this anywhere online. As soon as I heard this story, it just kind of sounded right in my head, though. So I'll go ahead and lay it out here. Recently, everyone I'm sure watching this video knows about the whole GameStop and the Wall Street bets and the stock manipulation, everything that happened with that. Companies like Robinhood restricting trading on GameStop stocks in a way to manipulate the market. And AMD actually got tied into that sort of loosely. And if you look over on their stock price over the last 5 days, you can see that it dropped by a non-insignificant amount. It wasn't as big of a change as we saw in like GameStop and AMC and Nokia and BlackBerry and all that. But their price dropped by about $10, which is roughly 10% of their stock value, which had been trading for around $95. And even right now, it's still down around $87, which, as I said, it's like $8 to $10 roughly it dropped, which is 10% of their value. So that's a non-insignificant amount. It's not going to cripple the company, but it would definitely usually indicate that something is going wrong. Maybe there was some bad news about AMD or their chip production or something like that. So my theory is that maybe this story with Samsung is a little bit of a plant, maybe by AMD. Now, whether or not they're actually going with Samsung or not, just having a story like that out there saying they could be alleviating their production issues would seemingly would boost the stock price, because people would say, okay, they're going to be able to sell more product, stock price would go up. So that's kind of where my theory comes in, is that maybe this story is a plant. Whether true or not about them going to Samsung, it would still, in theory, help boost their stock price a little bit, if people were to believe it. Now, you may be asking, how does this involve what recently happened with the stock market, Wall Street bets, and GameStop and all of that? Well, these massive hedge funds, which were bleeding capital from everything that these Redditors were doing to them, in a way for them to sort of alleviate what was happening and all of the money they were losing, it seems that Robinhood got involved, and that's the app where people use to sell and trade stocks. And for a brief period of time, they restricted the sale of AMD stocks to just one share. And they did this in an effort to manipulate the market and drive down the price of AMD stock in order to help alleviate the losses for people that would have had shorts against AMD stock. And I'm not going to get into the whole thing about shorts and short squeezes and all that stuff, but just in essence, a short is when you are more or less betting on a company's stock price going down. So if these big hedge funds had some shorts against AMD and that stock price fell, that would then benefit them greatly, and they would be able to recoup some of the money they lost with what was going on with GameStop. A Redditor explained this by saying, "This is important because it's blatant manipulation of AMD stock. By limiting buys on a stock, Robinhood is creating artificial sell pressure, which can lower the stock price. AMD's short interest, number of people betting that AMD's stock price will go down, has also risen in the past month. AMD also happens to be one of the most held stocks on Robinhood. An attack on AMD stock is an attack on the company." And for anyone that knows AMD, you know since Ryzen initially came out a few years back, their stock price has steadily gone up, making them one of, really one of the best companies to invest in, especially if you got in, maybe 6 months before the very first Ryzen CPUs came out. At that time, I believe the stock was trading in the single digits, like $4 or $5. And now it's up almost near $100, recently before this dropped down to 85. So if you had invested back then, for that, you would be doing pretty well right now as far as AMD stock is concerned. And we honestly have no reason to think that number should go down as long as they continue along on the path that they are. Their stock price really should only continue to rise from here. So the fact that their price suddenly dropped is definitely calling a lot of things into question as to, what Robinhood did here. And it seems like an obvious source of market manipulation, which brings us back to the whole Samsung story. If AMD wanted to get their stock back up, what would be a good way to do that? Go ahead and plant a story about you getting more product out into the market so you can make more money and make your stock price come back up despite what Robinhood and other companies might be doing in order to drive that price down to make some money off of their shorts on the AMD stock. Now, that's just that's my conspiracy theory as to why that's all happening. The fact that Robinhood did this, that's a fact. Everything that's happening with its AMD stock is real. The only conspiracy theory is how that sort of connects with the whole Samsung story. So let me know down in the comments below, what you think about that. I'll be curious to get your guys' feedback on it as well. Continuing on, though, discussing AMD, it looks like we could be seeing some more Navi 21 reference cards here in the first quarter or first half of 2021, which up until now was actually planned to be stopped, the productions of the reference cards themselves, where they would focus more on shipping GPUs over to their board partners. But it sounds like that's not the case, as the shortages have been happening, and the only place you could maybe get a card was directly off of the AMD website. And AMD had this to say. This is AMD's Rich Corpus, senior director, and he says, "Based on the response of our AMD Radeon RX 6800 series and RX 6900 XT reference design graphics cards, we are extending production to make them available to as many gamers as possible on AMD.com at SEP, which is defined as your single exit price." So you can kind of think of that as an MSRP. I had to look that up. That's the first time I've ever heard that term. He then goes on to say, "Additional reference cards are expected to be available in the first quarter of 2021. We will also continue supporting our partners in the development of their custom AMD Radeon RX 6000 series graphics cards and designs." And on video cards, they also noted that last year, Scott Herkelman said that they would only be manufacturing reference RX 6000 cards through early 2021. So there was already a planned sort of exit of the reference model card, which AMD does traditionally do with their reference cards. They'll usually have them available right at launch for reviewers and anyone that wants to buy them on launch day, and then they sort of just let everything go over to the board partner. So it's a little bit different from how NVIDIA does it, as NVIDIA typically will manufacture reference model cards throughout the entire lifespan of a card until it reaches, end of end of production. So this is just sort of a way for AMD to kind of take control of what's going on and maybe be able to get these cards to people that actually want to buy them for gaming, take them out of the hands of potential cryptocurrency miners and stuff like that by shipping directly to them. So yeah, this is one way that could help with inventory, at least for some people. So we'll just have to wait and see. But honestly, I really wished AMD would continue producing these cards long term, especially with, what seems like they put a lot of effort into designing the reference cooler on these new 6000 series cards, and it makes those cards pretty much compete right alongside of the board partner cards, as their coolers are pretty much just as good now. So I think a lot of people would like to be able to get them, not only for that, but also just aesthetically, and to have an AMD reference card, as the coolers are actually decent. So hopefully they continue production long term, and maybe think about that in the future, especially when they've made an actual good cooler this time around. Last up, but certainly not least, I wanted to talk about MLB The Show 21. This is just really a personal interest story of mine. I'm not sure how many of you guys out there like to play sports games. I do play sports game. I know there's a little bit of a stereotype around that, and people play sports games, but I'm a big sports fan, and I've always played sports games my whole life, mostly like Madden and baseball games. I've played them ever since I was a little kid, and they've always been some of my favorite games, although I don't really play them as much now anymore. But, Madden and MLB The Show have always been games I've pretty much picked up annually, just because I like to get the roster updates and have all the most up-to-date players, and things like that. And I know it's a bit of a shitty thing what they do every year, charging $60 for those things, but as a big sports fan, it's something that I've always just justified to myself because I personally enjoy it. And if you don't, that's, fine. But MLB The Show is an excellent baseball game. I think they have very good business practices compared to what 2K does with the NBA games, what EA does with the Madden and other sports titles they do as far as microtransactions, as far as that's concerned. The show to me is sort of seemed to always stay away from that, at least to some degree. And the games have always been excellent, but they've also been Sony exclusives ever since the beginning. So the fact that they are now been announced to be coming to the Xbox One as well as the Xbox Series consoles is actually huge news, as this game is made by a first-party Sony developer. So this is actually Sony announcing they are bringing the show over to the Xbox, which is pretty freaking cool. Now, they didn't say anything about it coming to the PC or anything like that, but I, for one, would be very excited if they did make these games available on the PC, and I would love to be able to play it on top-end hardware and see how it runs on our systems and stuff like that. Even though these games do run very well on console, I believe I had MLB The Show on the PS4 Pro, and the games seem to run mostly at 60 frames per second, apart from sometimes during like cutscenes where it would like pan, shots of the entire stadium and stuff like that. So the games do run very well on console, but it doesn't mean I don't want to try it out on PC, play it 4K native, max settings and all that, because these games are gorgeous. The MLB The Show games graphics have always just been really, really good. And as far as a baseball simulation game, I feel like the best that there's ever been. I mean, there used to be games back in the day, RBI, World Series Baseball, that I all played, growing up. But once MLB The Show kind of took over the scene, they completely crushed the competition. And the show is, without a doubt, the best baseball series. I'm not sure if there's an exclusivity deal with the MLB, but even if there wasn't, I still feel like they'd be the best games out there. I don't think EA could do a better job than what they're doing, and if they did, it would probably be muddled with microtransactions and all that other bullshit. So, that's just a personal interest story of mine. It's coming to the Xbox now. That's pretty big, especially considering the game's been around for more than a decade, I'm pretty sure, and it's always been a Sony first-party title. So seeing them put a game on the Xbox is pretty big, and we might see more titles possibly in the future. They also mentioned a Yakuza game going over there, which I don't really have much interest in. But yeah, them having first-party titles going to Xbox is a pretty big deal. Maybe we'll see more games in the future do that, as it would only help to basically double their revenue. So why wouldn't you want to? And if it goes to the Xbox, I feel like it's only a matter of time before they decide to bring those games over to the PC, as well as if they feel like porting it, will give them a good enough return on their investment, which I think it would. I think we would have enough people that would want to play these games on PC. I'm curious what the Madden sales have been like since they returned back to the PC as well. Yeah, be curious to see that. But That's all I've got for you guys today. I am going to go ahead and get out of here. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did or learned something new, please leave me your thoughts, comments, and opinions down below. Leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you next time for another video.